them, or you might want to go with other algorithms. But here, I'm going to use a very naive algorithm, and maybe you might want to check my website and pick up on the genetic algorithm if you want to study it further and see how consistent that will be in terms of matching the data. And lastly, our last idea here is to be able to send our app out, like send it to individuals to use wherever they find themselves in the world. And to use this, we need a special account with one or two data companies. So here we need Heroku. So to achieve these 5 objectives, as I pointed out earlier, there's a need for us to have Python. Python is going to be the machine that will drive us in getting the functions ready, getting the app doing what we would like it to do. Now, the next thing here is to use oTree. oTree is more or less like using Python within its own right. Then HTML is just trying to give us a very good interface in terms of how our app is supposed to look like. So you would need 1 or 2 tutorials on HTML, and I think I made it known somewhere here. And lastly, Heroku. Heroku is basically an app that will help you develop or deploy your app. So you need a credit card first, then you go open an account with them, and it's mostly free. If you are developing it just for hobbies, it's mostly free, so don't worry about that. But if you have a large data set and people are using it very often and it has very high speed and all that, then you might want to go with the paid version. But for now, we just stick with a very basic one. So that will be the objective of our 3-day workshop. I'll come back and start by looking at the app. But before that, just an outline of what we'll be doing each and every meeting. The first meeting is supposed to be today. I try as much as possible to upload the video as well as the links. So you might want to watch it first before coming in. So if you have extra questions, you can come and ask. And it will also help us, speed things up. So when you click on this video, it will take you straight to this side. You can see what's going on and probably make your own. If you have something to learn, you can learn from that. In terms of the code, I try as much as possible to also post the code that I have in terms of the video. So you can just download it, play around with it, and see what might be the outcome. So the first part of today's meeting is going to take the installation process. And because I've already sent the video out, I might have to skip this guy here and maybe meet you guys one-on-one if you have issues, and I see how best I can help you solve it. In terms of the second lecture, which I'll start right away, just after looking at the app, is for us to start the basis of Python. So you might want to watch this video, or you might want to download this code to go with us, or in case you need further tutorials, you might just click on this guy here. This is a very powerful tutorial base for those interested in learning Python and for those interested in learning HTML. If you want to learn Java as well, it's also very good. So I would really encourage you guys to visit this site a lot. So if you want Python, just click here. If you want HTML, just click here. Now, the second part of today's meeting is to introduce you to how to create the app, the very basis of it. So we go through the theory and all that. So that should be fine. And lastly, we will tend to look at 1 or 2 stuffs in terms of HTML. So this is the first part of our meeting, which is today, and tomorrow on Wednesday and Friday, we'll continue with updating our app and getting our AI up and running. Is there anyone with any questions so far? Any question in there, everyone?
No questions yet.
Good. So if there are no questions, then let's quickly see the app that I playing around with for this workshop. If you've not tried it, I really encourage you to try it, because we need the data to compare with our AI. If you already tried it, then that's good. So just a way of introduction, how the app works. It starts by introducing itself. So basically, this is an app that was created by me from Simon Fraser University. This is my link, and it basically takes my name. So if you want an app that can help take one's name, so it has my name here, Abdul-Salam. I'm asking for the participant to give me his name. Then I'll also ask for the participant's email address. So when I do this, Within Heroku, I have my database. So anyone who comes in here and gives me his name, I have his name captured. So the aim here is for you guys to come up with an app that can do almost the same thing or better. So having said that, this is the first page. This is the first page. It will ask you to click next. So you come here, you give your consent that you indeed want to use this app. I ask you to click next. When you click next to the next page, I ask you whether what app are you interested in using. So with this app, it can help you compute your quadratic equation, or it can help you compute your investment decision. So what you can see here is you can see that the app is clearly talking to you. Because you said your name is Farouk Abdul-Salam, the app is trying to get interactive. So hi, hello Farouk, please provide the following details. So in a situation where I'm interested in using a quadratic equation, I will just click quadratic. Then it will ask me what is my educational background. There's supposed to be a background here, whether you are in economics or you are in other fields. So for instance, when I'm in economics, I will just click on economics. Then again, it will ask me what is my major concern as of this time, the COVID era. Maybe I'm interested and so much worried about the job market, so I will just click on the job. So as app developers or as economists, even though this is the most important thing that the individual is interested in using, we try as much as possible to see whether we can come in with extra questions so that we can sell our product. So what these additional 2 questions happen to do here is we are trying to market a new product to the person, even though the person is just interested in computing a quadratic equation. So this is what your app is doing in the background. So if I click on the next page, let's see what comes out of this side. So you can clearly see that even though the person is interested in using a quadratic equation, which is a very simple mathematical formula, because the person said he's interested in job, as in from the previous question, we try as much as possible to sell something to him. We sell the new, job fair that's coming up. Do we get it? Because he has given us his preference, we are trying to sell this new product to him, even though he didn't ask for it. So that's where the advertisement comes in. So the aim here is, as we develop our own apps during this workshop, you have different things to sell to your user. You just come up with something innovative and see whether you can let it pop up when the person makes such a decision. So here, the person is interested in computing we know that a quadratic equation is of this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So we ask you, what is your a? Maybe a equals 2. What is your b? Maybe my b equals 1. What is your c, which is your constant? Maybe my c equals 4, something like this. Then we click on the next page. So here, Python is in the background computing the quadratic equation for us. And at the end of the day, what Python does here is it will try as much as possible to capture what the person has given us in terms of his A coefficient, his B coefficient, and his C coefficient. So nothing is interesting here. What's most intuitive here is the fact that our app has been able to compute his results. And if you know a quadratic equation, you know for sure it comes with a positive result and a negative one. So our app will be able to do that. So keep this guy in mind as we develop our app and make it better. I'll try as much as possible to make the code available to you guys. See how best you guys can also play around with it and change it and come up with your own innovative way of giving the results to the individual. Now let's go to the next page. Here, we are asking for simple decisions. So these decisions are very important for our AI, because I need you guys to come in here, give your own decisions, then see how best these decisions goes with our AI prediction. So here I'm asking whether you might want to go with a constant amount of $100, or you might want to have a random number that's been chosen for you between a 50 and 150. So the idea here is we are trying to use this app to advise the government. So the government has come up with a new program which they call the CERB. That is, if you happen to be a worker because of the COVID, if you are below a certain threshold and you are not working, they will just give you a constant $1,000. Now, how do we come in as economists to advise the government? How do individuals make decisions when they are being promised a constant amount of 100 compared to the fact that they can go to work and either get a low salary of 50 or as high as 150? Will this individual stick up with this government payment and not work, or will he or she still go to work and based on his random payments, go with that? So this is a very intuitive way of making sure that we as economists can also come up with our own AI to predict how the individuals in the economy will also behave. So for instance, in my first decision making, I say, I would like to go with the random, which means I would like to go work. I don't want to stick with this 100 amount, which is constant. Now let's see the results. An individual makes this decision today. This is the result that comes out. Farouk, you chose a random amount of 100. You chose a random fixed amount of 100, but this is the amount that showed up. So when I'm an individual who went with a random and random gave me an additional $9 compared to going with the fixed, which has only 100, I'm happy because I made a good decision, which is giving me an additional $9. Now I go to the second period, which is the next month. Given the fact that random gave me extra, I still go with random. Let's see what comes out of it. I'm still getting extra amount from random. Let's go to the third. What comes out of this? Still the random is giving me more. If you go with fixed, this is what the fixed is also giving you. So this is what we try as much as possible to see whether we can mimic this data set using our AI. So that will be our objective for this 3 meetings. So that will be the end of the review of the app. If you happen to have questions, just let me know. Questions in the room?
Not that I see in the chat.
Okay, no questions yet? Raymond? Hi, Raymond?
No questions I see in the chat.
Okay, good. Good. Now let's quickly go ahead with the introduction. And again, as I pointed out, I might have to skip the first lecture, this guy here, given the fact that I already sent the videos out. And as I pointed out to Konstantin, I'll be happy to look at individual problems in terms of the installation as they come up. So why not just start with the basics of Python? And as I said, I posted this video out as well as this code. So just make sure you stop me if particular code is not clear. So I'm going to pull up my PyCharm and I'll start with the basics of Python. So just let me know if there happens to be any question. So what I'm trying to look at here is, so let me get this guy up and running. I have this guy here. Yeah, I want to go with this. So let me just open a new one. So I'm going to start a new file. Let's call it basics interaction. So this is the name of our file that will help us compute our Python code. So I'll start by looking at the very basics of it. So this might look very basic to those who already know Python, so just bear with me. In terms of Python, one thing I would like to point out is there are 2 types of data sets that you mostly work with. The first is the numeric data. So numeric data, this is where we have numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 till the end of it. So numerics, yeah, someone just joined in, sorry. So numeric data sets can also be said to be numbers like floats, like integers and whatnot. So just think of numerics as maybe 1, as maybe 2, as maybe 3 and whatnot. So for instance, when you type 1, maybe 0.43 in Python, and you want to see the type of data that is, you might want to right click this guy, go down to the console and see the specification that has been given to you. It tells you the type of data that you have and the type of the type of data that you have. So this is just by way of the numerics. So let's keep that one in mind. what I would like to build up upon this numeric side of the argument is that whenever you have numbers in Python, there's a need for you to assign a special letter to it. So for instance, I have a number which is 1. In Python, I would like to tell Python, hey, whenever Python sees A, take it as 1. So when you do that and you run this code, whenever Python sees A, it sees it as 1. To see the result of what you've done, the most important code here is print. So when you type print and you type A and you run this guy here, you can just click on the green line. You can see that the 1 is showing up because Python now knows that whenever it sees A is 1. A situation like B, for instance, maybe B equals 3. You print out your code for B, you can clearly see that B is also showing up here. So B is also 2. So when I run this line of code, you can see A is showing up because I've already printed A. You can see B is showing up because I've already printed B. Now the question here is, it might be the case that you don't want to see the results of your A. So for you to make something redundant, you don't want it to run, you don't want to see it, you might want to use this hashtag here. When you do that, it's not going to show up again. So when I try this guy here, clean my interface, and I try this guy, you can clearly see that only 3 shows up because I've already hashtagged this guy and this guy is no more active. So that's how to play along with the numbers. Now the next line of question here is, now that we know numbers, why not just go ahead and do some simple computations given the numbers that we have? So by this, I mean simple additions, subtractions, divisions, and multiplications. So in terms of addition, the most important thing here is this sign here represents addition. So I might be interested in adding A plus B. This is my addition. Again, as I pointed out, you might be interested in assigning a special letter to it. So whenever Python sees C, Python knows that that is always going to be the addition of A and B. And Python already knows A, Python already knows B. So everything is working as indicated. So you might want to print this result to see what the outcome is going to be. So when I print this guy out and I run it again, you can see that I have 4 here, which is the result for my A plus B. And A is 1 and B is 3. So I have 4 over there playing out nicely. I might be interested in running a simple subtraction. Here, subtraction is just this guy here, the usual subtractions that we know. So here I'm interested in subtracting A minus B, and I come down here, so D equals A minus B. Again, I want to see the result of what I've done. I'll use the print command to see what's going on. I run this guy here. I see that, hey, it's minus 2, and that's consistent with the computation because A is 1 and B is 3. Lastly, the last 2 operators here happens to be multiplication. So you might be interested in multiplying the 2 variables, A and B. Yeah, question, Raymond?
Yeah, there's a person's asking what the hashtag is for.
Yeah, so the hashtag here is to keep that line of code redundant. You don't want to see it showing up. Yeah, it's for comments. Comment it out. You don't want to see it again. You are done with it, right? So for instance, just like what we just did earlier, if I'm interested in running just D, I don't want to see C, I don't want to see B, then I will just hashtag this guy. So when I run this line of code, see what comes out of it. I only see minus 2, which is just this guy. So for it, I don't want to see A as well. So when I do that, I just end up with this guy here. Yeah, so that's how to go ahead with the hashtag, and that's a good question. There's a need for more questions. Just feel free as we work along these lines of code. Now, the next line of code here is a simple multiplication. So for multiplication, it's just this star here. So for instance, you're interested in A multiplied by B. Again, we assign this guy as our E. Then we have the result showing up. So we print out the result and we see what comes out of it. So this is going to be E, which is our result for the multiplication. So here you can run it again nicely. You see the results showing up for you. If you want to stop seeing all the earlier commands, just hashtag them, run your line, and you just see the final results showing up. So we are done with multiplication. Now the last one might be a simple division. So to divide in Python, the most important command is the slash here. So let's take the situation where I have F here, which is A divided by B. And let's print out F, and let's see the result of it. So here I have the F, and again, I can hashtag the earlier ones if I'm not interested in seeing. So this guy here, because you see the red line here, it means this is not recognizable. This is not a line of code. So here, this is wrong. The best approach is this guy here. That's division. Okay, so when you see red line, wait for some few seconds. If it's still showing up, it means you are wrong. So there's a need for you to further look at the line critically again and make your corrections. So let's see a division, a simple division, and let's run the, so we have a simple division showing up here for us, 0.03333. So that's how to play along Python in terms of knowing these basics. Now let's go and analyze strings. So by strings, this happens to be alphabets like A, B, C, D till the end, like your name, like the name of the university. These are not numbers, these are letters. So we call it strings in Python. So in Python, we can at the same time use strings wherever we want it. So this is how to look at Python in terms of string. So for instance, my name is Farouk, and I'm interested in assigning my name to Python. So whenever Python sees G, Python should know that that is my name. So I say my name is Farouk. I've assigned G to be Farouk. So whenever Python sees G, Python should assign it to Farouk. Now, as I pointed out earlier, because you see a red line here, it means your line of code is technically wrong. So there's a need for you to look further into it. Now, the reason why we have this red line here is, unlike the numeric, when you assign it, here, when you assign it, there's a need for you to have a quotation mark. So when you have a quotation mark, everything works fine. So here, when you come here and you ask for Python to print out G for you, you can clearly see that Python is going to give you Farouk. So let's run this guy again, and let's see what comes out of it. So you can see Farouk here. So that's what we mean by string. An example here is after G comes H. So let's take the situation where we are interested in assigning another string to Python. So an example here is we might be interested in assigning Abdul-Salam, which is my surname, to Python. So Python now understands that whenever it sees G, H is also Abdul-Salam. So I have this guy here. So when I print this guy out, which is H, that's Python now knows to be Abdul-Salam. When we print it out, let's see what comes out of it. So we have Abdul-Salam here. So whenever you print H, Python now understands that this is Abdul-Salam. Now the question here is, can you add a string to a string? That is, can you merge G to H so that you have my first name and my last name all together? And the answer is yes. So let's take the situation where I would like to add G, which is my first name, plus H, which is my last name. So we have a situation where we have G and H, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So let's call that J. So let's go to Python and ask Python to print out J for us. Now keep a very note something here. This is going to be very interesting in terms of how Python comes out of it. Now you see how Python prints out my name. It prints out Farouk together with the Abdul, and there's supposed to be a space in between the two. So first of all, what we realize here is it is indeed okay to add a string to a string. Now, I'm not very comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable with this because the Farouk is being attached to the Abdul. So what you can do here is, as you assign G to Farouk, you might want to space it out a bit. And when you do that, your life becomes easier. Now run it again and let's see what comes out of it. So you can now clearly see that it's now Farouk with a very good space and Abdul-Salam also showing up. So we can add a string to a string. We can space them out as much as we want and all that. Now, the next line of question here is within the basics, as we started with today, is how can we add a string to a numeric? So for instance, you might be interested in saying that Farouk is 5 years old. We know that we can add Farouk to Farouk. We know that we can, but is it possible to add Farouk to maybe a numeric? So let's see how that works. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So K, let's take the situation where K equals my age. So this is old. Now I'm interested in adding a numeric to a string. So let's IJKL. So let's take L to be the situation where I say Farouk. Because I already know Farouk, I'm just going to write G. I also need my surname, so I'm just going to write H. So Farouk Abdul-Salam. I want to say that Farouk Abdul-Salam is 5 years old. So instead of, let's take the situation where I write 5 years. I write 5. And then old, I know what an old stands for in Python because I already assigned it to K. So I have K here. So just keep an eye on this function here. G is a string because that's Farouk. H is a string because that's Abdul-Salam. But 5 here happens to be a number. And K is still a string. Now the question here is, can I print out this guy? Is it possible to run this line of code? So what you can clearly see here is this guy is not possible. So when you try to run this guy, I believe Python will tell you this guy is not possible because you can't add a string to a numeric. It's not possible, right? Because we have a numeric in there, so we can't add a string to a numeric. So what you can do here is you can clearly come here in front of your numeric, change it to string, and you can change it to string by writing str into brackets the number. Now let's see whether when we run this guy here, whether it's going to work or not. So we have this guy here. Now we have everything running. Can someone notice something here? Can someone notice something here? Is something wrong? So you can see that the Farouk Abdul-Salam, but the 5 is very much in between the name and then the old. Can someone propose something to help me solve it? Raymond, is there anyone finished suggestion there?
Constancy says, can you add the quotation marks instead of the string? I believe he's asking.
Yeah, so I can space it out. Yeah. So this guy here, as you guys pointed out, I can just space this Abdul out, right? So now we can now clearly come out here and see what's going on. So we now have Farouk Abdul-Salam. The 5 is here, but again, the old is still attached to the 5. So the same idea. So where you see the old, we can just put something nice here, space out the old, and this guy should equally work as well. So let's run it out, and you can see Farouk Abdul-Salam is 5 years old, or whatever function you might want to run. So just by way of recap, what we did was to know what are numerics in Python and how to assign them. How do we do simple additions in Python, multiplications and divisions? How do we understand strings? How do we add strings? How do we add strings to numerics? Now I'm going to go up here, back to where I hashtag. Now that we do understand what strings are, I want to do something that you might find useful as you write your line of code, because it will help you know where your issues are coming from. So here you can see that I'm printing out the result of my A, which is just 1. Now, what you might be interested in.
Hey, Farouk?
Yes, please, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt you. So someone's asking, so we could add spaces to strings, but not integers?
It doesn't, for integers, it doesn't really matter, right? Because integers are just integers. If you add a space, for instance, the situation here, if you add a space here, it still ends up with being A plus B. Unless, of course, you are asking about A here. I don't know where the question is coming from in terms of the space for the integer. If you are spacing out integers, it doesn't matter. If it is, let's see how it works here. If it is this guy here, it's still going to give you the same result. You see, the result is going to be 3. Let's see the situation where I space this integer. Remember, B is an integer because I assign it to a number. When I run it, it's still going to be the same result as earlier. So let me quickly run it in this execution. It's still just going to be the same thing. It's not going to change. Is that okay? So again, B plus C. Yeah, sure. So as I was trying to point out earlier, with regards to this guy here, you might be interested in explaining to anyone who doesn't know what you are doing as to what the first line of code is, what the second line of code is, and what's not. So what you can do here is you can use a string, right? And say A is assigned to 1. So when you come here and you run this line of code, you can clearly see that, where's my, yeah. Let me quickly rectify it. Give me some few seconds, guys. So here you can clearly see that A is being assigned to 1. So I'm going to run it here, right? So if you come here, A is assigned to 1. So you've now explained to someone who is not used to your code that whenever the person sees A, it means it has been assigned to 1. Is that okay with everyone? So A is being assigned to 1. So B, for instance, initially when I run B, I just see a number with no explanation. So you might want to come here and maybe explain to the person reading your code that B is assigned to 3. So the person can clearly see what's going on when the person picks up your line of code. So you might want to run it and see what the result is. So B is assigned to 3. And you can come here, C, you can say C is just addition. You run it, you see C coming up, and it comes out with addition as properly indicated. So addition, which is 4. And you can end up with all the other lines of code. Is that okay with everyone? Questions in there, Raymond?
Nope, no questions.
Okay, so having said that, I would like to just finish up with a more sophisticated way of looking at these simple additions and subtractions in terms of maybe board math, in terms of which ones counts first and what's not. So for instance, you might be interested in assigning a number M, which is just an addition. First of all, it has A plus B. Then after adding A and B, it then multiplies it with B. So when you have such sophisticated way of doing your math, especially when you come across stuff like quadratic equations and what's not, this is one thing you have to keep an eye on. The bracket is very, very important because it keeps your equation in line. So you first of all start with this guy here before you multiply with this guy. So here, when you print out M, you see that M comes out with its own result, but in the way that you want it to be. But if you're not being careful and you just take away these brackets, then it will be more or less like an improper way of computing M. So just keep that one in mind as well. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to take questions for the next 5 minutes. You might, for the next 5 minutes, then we might take maybe 5 minutes break. You can stay here, ask questions within the 5 minutes break, then we come back and look at more advanced way of looking at the code. Then we start developing the app. Is that okay? So 5 minutes for questions, take a break 5 minutes, then we come back at 7:20. I'm going to be here for the next 10 minutes. Feel free to ask questions. If you don't have a question now, we can take a break, but that's 7:20. Second. Raymond, anyone with any question in there?
None so far.
Okay, sure. Then that looks good then.
Here's a question, Farouk.
Yeah.
Chelsea says, I'm curious if you print bracket G plus the quotation marks and then plus H bracket, would it work like how Constantine mentioned?
I believe it should. I believe it
Mhm.
should. By putting in this quotation, guys, here, you've technically changed this numeric to a string, right? So we can have a look at it quickly. You've technically changed your numeric to a string, and I believe it should work. Oh, yeah, G is not given because I didn't start running it from here. So let me just.
What they mean is instead of having like a 5 there, just have it completely empty.
Yeah, I think I did that, right? I just did here. Was that the
Yeah,
case?
like if you delete the 5, for example, and you just leave an empty space there.
Okay, let's see what comes out of it. I'm not particularly sure that this is going to work because
I think it will.
it's in between the two. It's not going to work, right? It's just going to be between the two, right? You probably have to assign something there. And I think what Constantine is saying here is because 5 is a number, we can either use a string in front of it or we can use a quotation mark in front, in between it, which will just end up being the same. Yeah. Yeah, if you just leave a space, it's not going to show up because just going to be a space. No one, it doesn't understand what the space is. It just leaves extra space for you. Maybe for me to go and camp there, right? If I go for camping, I can sleep here.
That's I guess that's what I thought they were wondering, if you could just capture the space. Yeah, okay. Cool. Cool.
Questions? Okay. Yeah, someone also sent a question. Sorry, I think Raymond, do you mind having a look at it for me?
Yeah, so well, it just seems like a discussion about that question.
Is there questions? Are we back yet?
No questions.
Good. So just let me know if you have questions, and I'll be happy to, help out with it. Okay. 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 So let's go to the intermediary. Let's see what we have in here. So how many are we here? If you happen to be here, just type present so that I get to know that we are on the same track. If not, maybe we wait for them for additional 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, let me quickly see. So let me know, Raymond, if it's encouraging. If it's encouraging, then we start right away. If not, then we wait for some few minutes.
It looks encouraging.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Then let's start right away, and let's see what I intend by intermediary or perhaps advanced, given what we just started right now. Is my screen up and running?
Yep.
Good. So let's see what we have here. So now that we are done with the simple addition and subtraction, my aim here is to introduce you to what I call functions. And by functions, what I intend here is something more sophisticated. Instead of just saying A plus B, we would like to create our own function that will help us add, that will help us subtract, and that will help us decide what our investment portfolio is in terms of its principal and what's not. So to do that, one of the most important things that you need to understand here is what they call Boolean, or what we call probably true and false outcomes. So let me quickly give you guys an outline here. Imagine a situation where I say M has been assigned to 2, and I assigned the number N to maybe 3. So these are numbers that have been assigned to Python. Python understands these numbers very well. If I print them out, obviously Python will get to know them. Now, if I come up with an argument that says that A is the same as B, how should I formulate it in Python? To do this, these are the most important operators. So for you to claim that A is the same as B, you have to write this equality twice. So here you claim that M is the same as N. For you to claim the opposite might come in different versions. That is to say, M is not the same as N. So if you want to say something is not, this exclamation together with the equality implies that it's not. Again, you might want to say that they are not the same in the sense that M is greater than N. Greater than in Python is just this operator. You might want to also come up and say that it's less than. Or finally, or perhaps a more advanced way of looking at it, you might want to say this guy is equal to, or perhaps greater than N, or is lesser than, or equal to N. So these operators are very powerful if you want to play along with them, as I indicated. So please let me know if you have questions before I go ahead with it. So let's take the situation where our first claim here, which happens to be the fact that M is the same as N. And of course, we should know that these guys aren't true, given the fact that M is 2 and N is 3. So let's take the situation where this claim has been assigned to a letter R. We've assigned this claim to the letter R. Let's print out R and let's see what Python says. I'm going to run this guy and see here. So Python says that this claim R that we just made is wrong because M is 2 and n is 2 and n is 3. So there's no way the two can be the same. So that's one way of understanding the Boolean operators, and it's going to be very important in terms of you developing your functions. Now let's assess the second claim, wherein we assume that, let's give this guy S. S is our second claim. We assume that indeed M is not the same as N. So let's print it out and let's see here. This we should see to be true because it's consistent with what we have. And when you run this guy here, you see that the first one is false from the first R, and the second one is true because S is true. If you have questions, please let me know. Now let's assess this claim. If you want to see this claim, let's give it the letter N. That is to say M is greater than N. Let's see whether that is true or false. You print it out. Let's print out this claim. Again, let's see what comes out of it. We should expect a false claim, and that's true, that this is indeed false. And maybe you might want to try this guy here. It will come up with its own claim till the very last one. So this is what you have to keep an eye on in terms of you developing your Boolean operators, in terms of you formulating something pretty much sophisticated with your app. An example is when I created the app that I showed you guys earlier, I gave it a special command. That is to say, if the individual says that he is 1, then do this. So if the claim is false, the app will forgo it. If the claim is true, then the app will then execute the claim that you just gave. So please keep an eye here, as I will obviously come back to it and show you how it plays out. Questions in there, Raymond? Raymond, questions?
Nope.
So let's see, after this guy here, let's develop a function that will help us compute, very basic additions and subtractions, and we can now come back to the Boolean. So to create a function that will help you do a very simple math, what you have to start here is you start with div. You define the name of the function. Now let's assume that the name of my function is addition. It basically adds for me. So this guy here, you can give it any name at all you want, unless of course it's a special name that Python recognizes, in which case it wouldn't run. So you can give it any name at all. So for me, I'm going to give it add because I would like it to add 1 or 2 things for me. So this is very simple, add. You open the bracket, you close the bracket. Then you have this guy here. So this is very important as you create your function. Now for every function, it takes an input. The app that you just saw, for you to compute your quadratic equation, you have to give me an input as to what your A is, what your B is, and what your C is. So for you to create this app, you might want to just give it an input, which is A and B. And what does it do? It returns basically this guy here. And it's going to be very important. This guy here is also going to be very important as you create your app. There's a need for you to write return. This guy is important. This guy is important. The need for you to open this bracket is also equally important. These guys are also important. Now, what does it do? What it does is it adds A plus B for you. Simple. So you are done. So this is how to create an app that will help you compute a very simple math equation. Let's see the outcome of this app. So let's print out. If you want to print the results of your app, you can just say add. Now, what's your A? Let's take the situation where my A is 1 and my B is 2. Because those are the two inputs. My A is 1, my B is 2. When I run this guy here, you can see that it comes up with 3. Now, this is a very simple function that will help you compute addition. You can also decide to, I find this useful, but just feel free to go with whichever way that you think works for you. I've also decided to always assign something within the function. So here, I'm going to assign the addition to A plus B. So instead of asking it to return, A plus B, I'll just ask it to return C because C has already been assigned. So here you tend to see that it comes up with the same results, nothing new. So this is a function that will help you do a simple computation in terms of addition. If you are interested in doing writing a function that will help you do a simple subtraction, the same idea. Subtract. You can name it any other way that you want to. So subtract maybe underscore function. That's the name of my function. But just make sure there is no space in between the two. And I have this comma. Again, I assign it to C. It takes two variables, A minus B. It returns my C for me. So this function here does a very simple math by taking A and B, and it returns a very simple C for me. So in case I would like to see the result of my function, I write print. It takes subtract function. I need to write everything here. Just copy it, paste it in between, just like what we did earlier. Now, what's your A? We've not assigned anything to A, so maybe my A can be 1, my B can be 2. When I run this function in Python, you can clearly see that it comes out with -1 because this is just a simple subtraction that we have here. Is that okay with everyone? In terms of understanding what a function is, how a simple function works? Question?
Nope.
Okay, good. Now, what I'm going to do here is to run a function within a function. And what do I mean by that? Here, I'm going to run a function that first of all adds the two numbers. So I'll label it function that's obviously add and subtracts. Again, you open the bracket, you close the bracket, it has a couple of inputs in terms of A and B. Then I tell it, hey, first of all, return the addition of the two inputs for me. So I can just copy this guy here nicely, paste him here, because Python now understands what add means. And maybe you might want to call it E or D. So D equals the difference between this, the addition of these two functions. Then I also have a function that does a subtraction, which I already know. So I'm running a function within a function. So here I'm telling a function to subtract the two numbers for me again. First of all, add them. Secondly, subtract the two numbers. So first of all, it adds. Secondly, it subtracts. Then lastly, I have F. And what does F does is basically just says that my D plus my E. And I'll tell it to return my F for me. So I now have a function within a function, and you can clearly see what's going on here. So let me quickly print this guy out. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to, come to them, because this is a more sophisticated function in terms of a function within a function. So we have these guys. Of course, we don't know A. So let's take the situation where B is 2 and A is 1. Now let's run it. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it's going to run, because the earlier ones did run. So you can see that we have 2 here. And how is that possible? It's possible because, let's see, again, if you want to see the systematic process of getting this function running, you might want to use the print command that I pointed out earlier. So you want to use print here to see what's going on in terms of your addition. So here you write print D and tell yourself that, hey, with this print, this is the first addition. Then you come down here and you write the same print command and tell yourself that, hey, this is E, and E represents the subtraction command. So we now have the first one, we have the second one, everything should be ready. Now let's run it and let's see what we have here. So you can see, right? We can now see that the first line of code within this function, which is the first addition, gave us 3. The second one, when they subtracted each other, we had -1. Now, when you add -1 to 3, you should end up with we should end up with a +2. That's how it works. So this is how to run a function within a function. I'm going to stop here. If you have questions, please let me know. Shoot them. Questions? Raymond?
There's no questions yet. Somebody just actually asked,
Yeah.
what is return for?
So return is basically the results, right? What you would like to have, given to you at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, I'm interested in getting this guy here, this last line of code. You might be interested in getting a different line of code. For instance, you might be interested in getting E, right? So when you write return, it's going to return E for you, and E is going to be the subtraction of the two. So let's try and run it, and let's see what the outcome is going to be. So you see that it returns -1 for you, right? It returns -1 for you. Is that okay?
Yes. So what happens if you just make a function, but you don't add return at the end? Nothing would come out in the terminal? Okay.
It wouldn't show. If you use print will show something, but again, it wouldn't be stored within Python, and you will lose your data point. So there's a difference between print and return. Return is very strong because it gives you what you expect to see, whilst print is just going to show you, hey, this is what you expect to see. So it might be the case that I wouldn't run this guy here. I'll keep it mute, maybe return E, and maybe I'll write print here, print F. I might see F showing up. I might see F showing up, but even, yeah, I might see F showing up, but F is not what I see. Is giving me a wrong result because I'm giving it a different return indication. So there's a need for you to be very specific with the return function. Is that okay? I'll show you guys the importance of it again when we develop our investment decision function. Questions?
Yeah,
Anyone?
so there's one more question.
Yeah.
Max is asking, can you select and run only one function instead of all functions, even though there are more than one written?
Yeah, you can, but again, the user needs to be very careful. So when I run this function, for instance, if I want it to be very specific, I go down here and I execute it. What you see here is you're going to see a lot of errors, and I'm going to explain it very soon. So let me clean this guy first and run it and tell you what I intend by that. So I'm going to run this specific file. So you see that there are a lot of errors here, right? The reason why you have a lot of errors here is that if you're interested in running a specific function, and that happens to be add subtract function, first of all, the add subtract function has an embedded function in it, which you call add. And that's not being given to us. Python doesn't understand it now because you didn't copy it within your copy command. It also has a special function within it, which we call subtract function. Again, when you copied everything from here to here, the subtract function wasn't copied. So for you to run a specific line of code, for instance, if you're interested in running only this line of code, you have to be very careful that indeed within this line, there is the add and there is a subtract function. So the best way to do this is to start from this side. Start from the add, then attach the subtract function because they are needed. Then you end up with the function you would like to run. So when you do this, you see it coming out clearly.
Now, could you also then, for example, just run the add and the subtract function at the top and like just highlight those and then run it, and it would be stored in Python. And then you can run just the add _ subtract function by itself?
It can be done. It can be done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But given my PyCharm outlook, my best way of going about this is if I know that I'm keeping up a certain process, I always keep on running them, because as soon as I change a certain line of code, might affect everything. So I need to go back and start from there to keep up with the codes that I have already. So it could be done. It's obviously stored and be fine to work.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
And so, yeah, I think so. That answers the question. Someone else asks, what does the indentation do to the equation?
Yeah, the indentation, what we have here, I think, yeah. So for the indentation, what it does is it specifically tells you where you are working. So here, when you start with this function, when you start here, when you move it here, it's not going to work. What the indentation does is it takes it systematic. So I start with this particular line of code. Do I need to do something within a subset of it, or do I just need to go straight down? If I need to go straight down, then I keep the indent straight. If I need to do something within the subset of it, then I need to go further inside that particular line of code. So I'll show you guys the importance of indentation when we come to the if and else command. So just keep that in mind and make sure you ask about the indentation when they show up within the if and else command. Is that okay? Is that okay, Raymond?
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, so just let me know if there are questions. I'm quickly going to go through the if and else command and see whether I can, answer your question much clearly in terms of the indentation, okay? So now that we are done with the function within a function, now that we are done with, I believe, the Boolean operators, why not define two functions, right? So why not define a new function here that will help us with the decision-making process? I'm going to define this function. I'm going to call it an investment function. And we know for every investment, there are a couple of things that we need. We need to have a principal. We need to have the interest rate that has been promised. Then lastly, we need the time that's needed, or the year that is involved.
Sorry to interrupt you. I actually just missed another question that happened earlier. Someone else asks, what are Python conventions with spacing in an equation? Do we put spaces before and after the equal signs, etc.?
Yeah, so it doesn't for here. As you can clearly see, when it's a specific equation, it doesn't really matter, right? The most important thing here is, I believe I should make it known, is the case sensitivity of it. In terms of whether it's a capital letter, in terms of whether it's a small letter and all that, that is going to be very important. But in terms of you spacing out, maybe D equals something out and you just space it like this, it's just fine. What you should be careful about is if the space is before the actual letter itself. So for instance, when you space it like this, then you have a wrong indentation. And with a wrong indentation comes a wrong answer. So spacing, if indentation is okay, I don't think you have much of a difficulty. If the indentation is wrong, then that's where you have issues with it. So for instance, when I'm supposed to run this guy again, back to the top, and I run the executed function, it should work out. Nothing should, there's nothing wrong with it. But if I rather come here and I indent it like, I space it out like this, then there's a problem. Have I answered your question, or is that not it? Yeah, Raymond, okay, good. So we have these guys here. Now we're going to define an investment decision function. We like to get a return out of it. So let's call it the profit from your investment. And it's going to be, we take your principal. This is very important. Your principal, we then multiply it with 1 plus R, which is your interest rate. We take your interest rate, we put it here. Then we raise it to the power. So this is very important as well. When you want to raise something to the power of 2 to the power of 3, you put a double star there. To the power of 2. So this is your profit as you invest with us. And again, as I pointed out, return profit. So let's see what this is going to give us. So we have investments, so print investment. Copy this guy here. Oh, this is wrong. I'm gonna change it very soon. Copy this guy here, put it here. Investment equals this. Okay. Now to the power year, right? That should be the most important one. So we have investment equals this guy equals this guy. Yeah. Now, what's your principal? Let's take the situation. The principal that you want to invest is 1,000. Let's take the situation where your interest rate is 0.5. And let's take the situation where the amount of years that you would like to keep the investment with me to be maybe 2 years. Now, when you run this function, you tend to see that the return is 225. So here you can just quickly run, define, this is the investment outcome. Define it for us. This is the investment outcome. And that will just give you the results. So we are going to play with this function and let's see whether it makes sense or not. Now, instead of just saying profit, I'm going to introduce in something here. Instead of this guy being profit, I'm going to call it total profit. So here, I now have a total profit that will show up. Then I have a net profit. Within the same function, I have a net profit. So this is also going to be up and running. Now, what is the net profit? Your net profit is going to be your total profit. Copy this guy, paste it here, minus your principal. So at the end of the day, instead of just giving us one outcome, I'm interested in getting 2 outcomes. I'm interested in telling the person his total profit as well as net. So this is what we have here in terms of. So let's run this guy again and let's see the outcome. So you can see that we have the total profit here and we have the net profit here. So for sure, you can have a function that will give you 2 outcomes at the same time. Is that okay? Raymond, is there anyone with any question in there?
No.
Now, introduce in the Boolean. I'm going to introduce in the Boolean operator that we started with earlier. The condition that should be met. When the condition is true, then we expect the function to run. When the condition is not true, then the function is not going to run. Now, let's see how that works. So let's take the situation where within this function that we created, we are very specific as to what conditions to meet. So we say if the interest rate, because of Ponzi schemes, people might be interested in promising you an interest rate that is way above the market interest rate. So if the interest rate is above 0.5%, we don't want the function to run. We want the function to warn you. If the interest rate is below 0.5, then we want the function to run. So this is what I would like you guys to keep up in mind as we create these operators. So if the interest rate is, let's start with it having a lesser interest rate than the market interest rate. So if the interest rate is lesser than or equal to 5, then we would like these 2 functions to run. If the interest rate is lesser than or equal to 5, then we would like these 2 functions to run. Now, this is where the indentation comes in. Because I'm going to run this function under the if command, there's a need for me to indent it. That is to push it inside. So this function is going to run in the subset of the if command. So I will indent it. And I need to indent this guy as well, because the two are going to run here. Now, it might also be the case that it is not less than 0.5. Now, let's see how that works. You might want to use else, but else is just two conditions. Either you are a boy or you are a girl. Either it's today or it's tomorrow or whatever. So that's very restricted. To have a more comprehensive view of these guys here, what you might want to do here is to use the else if. It is more comprehensive. It takes a lot of conditions. So an example here is, I've captured the first condition that says that if the interest rate is less than 5%, run this function. What if the interest rate is greater than 5%, and at the same time, the interest rate is less than 1? Then I'm still sure of what's going on. I don't have any issues, so I will just tell them to run this guy. Questions, Konstantin? Konstantin, you have a question?
Yeah, Constantine asked, isn't this 50% question mark?
It's too much, right? Konstantin, is that your point? It's too much, right? For interest rates in the market, right? Is that your question?
No, you just keep calling it 5%. Isn't it 1.5? So isn't that 50%?
Where is that?
Like
Sorry.
after the LSIF and after the interest?
Or 0.5, which is 50%, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just asking.
Yeah, that's 50% because if you look at the computation for investment return, this one here is 100%. So 1 is 100%. So 100% is 100 divided by 100, which is 1. And 0.5 represents 50%. Is that okay? Or am I?
I think you were just saying earlier 5% on accident.
Oh, okay, 50%, sorry. Yeah, 50%. Yep, that's my bad. So else if 50%, then you like to get this line of code running. Then you might also come up with a very last decision-making process. That is to say, so we've captured the lower part of it. We've captured the upper part of it, which is reasonable. You might also want to capture the unreasonable aspect of it. That is to say, someone promising you an interest rate that is above 100%. You might be interested in giving a return, right? So these are 3 different conditions that you might want to have. You might want to have a different function run them. So an example here is, this is the net profit. I understand that we all understand what the total profit is and the net profit is. Let me finish up with the final part of it. I'm going to bring out a statement. Statement equals, okay, less interest. I'm going to bring out a statement here. I'm going to put it here so that we see which one is running at which time. This one is more interest. And lastly, I want to put a statement here which captures a warning. That is to say, you warn the person, hey, be careful. This is a Ponzi scheme, right? Because they are promising you an interest rate that is above the usual. So we have the 3 statements here. Playing out. Now let's see which one is going to run. So here, I'm going to run the first line of code, which means the interest rate is less than or equal to 50%. Because 0.5, as Konstantin pointed out, is 50%. So let's run this code and let's see the outcome that we will see here. So I'm going to run this guy here quickly. All the three conditions should be met, and the line of code that we expect to see is this guy here. So you can clearly see that this is the line of code that was given to us because the condition has been met, right? The condition of less than 0.5 or equal to 0.5 has been met. So that's how come you see this guy here, you see this guy here, you see the less interest here. Now let me change the interest rate to maybe 0.7%. With that, we expect to see this line of code working. So let's see whether we are consistent in terms of our arguments. So I'm going to run this guy and let's see what comes out of it. So you can see that you have more interest. And lastly, let's see where the warning sign, starts to come up. It promises you an interest rate of 150%. Let's see what the statements will be in terms of the return. So when I run this guy here, hey, be careful, this is a Ponzi scheme, right? So this is how to define a function and how to get it up and running and all that. So if you have a question, please let me know.
Yeah, so what's the difference between if and else if somebody's asking?
In terms of, is it in terms of if and elif or?
Yeah, that's what they mean. The elif.
Yeah, so the elif takes lots and lots of conditions. So as I said, you might be interested in examining only two conditions: the situation where the interest rate is less than 5% or not. In that case, you can just use if and else. Very simple, nothing more. Just two conditions, and if and else is okay. But if you have several conditions to meet, then you have to meet all those conditions with the elif, which is more expansive than the else command. Did that answer your question? Question?
Yeah, it seems like it did. And Max asks, if we use a different IDE, not PyCharm with Python, would the same indent rule? Will the same indent rules apply for functions?
It depends, right? So
I believe it does because I normally use VS Code and it does apply.
Yeah. What's that? Sorry, Raymond. It should work out. Yeah. Feel free. Yeah. Yeah. Raymond.
Nope. That should be good.
Okay. So I'll try as much as possible to send this file out and see whether you guys can just copy it and put it in your whatever interface you work with and see whether you get consistent results. But my advice is to use PyCharm because it's more comprehensive as we work towards development of the apps. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to post this guy on my website, and I've already posted a couple of functions on my website as well. So you can just come here, go to the workshop, pick up the code, play around with it, see whether it makes sense. If you have questions, quickly shoot them, and I can hopefully I can answer. Now that we are done with the basis and all that, I would like to go to the development of the app, which will be the last part of today's discussion. So take 5 minutes break and let's come back and start developing an app, which we can clearly see where the code is coming from and what's not.
Hey, Farouk, here's another question. Somebody's getting an error. I don't know if you want to just pull up the message itself, but it says indentation error, unindent does not match any outer indentation level. How do you resolve that?
Sorry, if that's the case, do you mind taking a picture and then sending it to me, and I can for sure have a look at it. And again, as I said, I'll try and post this code and see how your indentation is consistent with it. Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay. So yeah, so please take 5 minutes break. Let's come back at around 8:05 and let's start with something in terms of the app development. So 5 minutes break, guys.
Farouk, someone's asking just to confirm that this recording will be posted somewhere.
Yeah, I will. It's on my website, right? So I think Audrey posted the website, so I'll make sure I get it posted. Yeah. Yeah, I should get it posted very soon. So just make sure you. Yeah, I'll get it posted. Yeah, so Raymond, can you please check whether the attendance is okay so that we can get started?
Okay, sure. Maybe everyone can do the same as last time and mention in text if you're present.
If you happen to be here, just type it, then we get it started. So the functions, okay, okay, good, good.
Yeah, it looks like there's plenty here.
It's reasonable, then we start. Yeah. So let's quickly start by looking at how to create an app. And I'm very sure that most of us might have come across the earlier video that I sent out in terms of getting oTree up and running. And I think a few of you had issues with the oTree. So as I said, I'll try as much as possible to find time to see whether I can be of help as we go. Now, to create an app, what I would like you guys to do here is follow these simple steps. Go to your desktop, create a folder. Maybe you might want to name it workshop. Just to be consistent, I will keep it as workshop. So name it as workshop. Open this folder. Now go to the topmost left part of it and click on the file. When you click on the file, there are a couple of things that will show up. For sure, you see the open windows and you see PowerShell. Keep the PowerShell and click on the PowerShell. Just click on this guy and you see a blue button showing up. Let me see whether I can enlarge it. Yeah. So if you see this guy, then you are ready to go. And just make sure you have your oTree installed. So if you look at the earlier code that I gave, it's just pip3 oTree and all that. Just put that line of code there and it should be able to install it. So my understanding is that everyone has already indicated that line of code here. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the app development. Is that okay? Is that okay? Questions, everyone?
No questions yet.
Oh, good. So to develop an app, what you might want to run here is just these 4 simple commands, and I'll post the commands on the website. oTree start project. So you want to start a project in oTree. So oTree start project, then you give it a name. So maybe you might want to name it as workshop, or you might want to name it as any other project that you find interesting. So oTree start project, and you give it a name. So this workshop is the name of my project. These guys here are standard. You need to write these guys. You don't have to change anything here. But with this workshop, you can write your name. You can write the name of a university, anything that works for you. When you're done with this guy, click enter. When you click enter, 1 or 2 commands comes up. They will ask you whether you might want to have sample apps in your folder, or you don't want to have them. Given the fact that we are keeping things very simple, we might want to go with the no option, just so we can just start with something more reasonable. And as we go into it, we can just go back in and use the Y to see more of the apps showing up. So for now, it's just no. And you just click enter. Now, the next line of command that will come here is they will ask you to go into the project folder that you just created. And that is this command here, cd workshop, which means go into your project folder. So you copy this guy. We mostly copy it by pressing enter. Just highlight it and press enter. And just come here and then paste it. Just right click it. It will paste by itself. Then enter again. So everything is fine. Everything is about to run. Now, this is a time for you to create your app, and you give it any special name that you might want to give. So for instance, here, I might be interested in giving it a name, which is workshop app. Before I do that, I need to write a couple of standard commands. So I start by writing oTree start app. Then I give it the name of my app, which is workshop app. or any other name that you deem relevant. For now, just to keep things consistent, I'm just going to name it workshop app, and I click on it. Hopefully it should run. So you can clearly see that there's an indication here that your app has been created, right? So you have your app up and running, everything is running smoothly. So the next thing you need to do here is keep this guy up and running, no issues with it. Then go to your folder. So remember, we created a workshop folder on the desktop, and with this line of command that we just finished running, see what comes out of it. A new folder has been given us. It comes with setting, it comes with workshop, it comes with templates and all that. When you find yourself here, one or two things that you have to do. The settings. The settings happens to be very important because it keeps basically the number of individuals you would like to have access to your app, as well as the name that you might want to have, as well as the number of apps. So let's open the settings and let's see what comes out of it. So when I open this setting with idle, you see this guy showing up here. So I'll go back and show you these guys in PyCharm, but just for a quick note. So this is what you see. So this is what we have within the setting. Here you have to take away all the hashtags. I'm going to take away all the hashtags. I'm taking away all the hashtags. I'm taking away all the hashtags within the settings. Settings is very easy to work with because the only thing you need to do here is you just have to change the name of the app. So remember, we name it as workshop app. So we just come here and name it as workshop app. Settings happens to be very easy. So you come back wherever you find public goods, just change it to the workshop app. It's very simple, so I don't have to spend much time on the settings. Now, what I find interesting here within the setting is this guy here. How many individuals do you want to have access to your app? So this guy here, which is the number demo participants, implies how many individuals that you intend to have. It might be 3, it might be 30, it might be 40, or it might be anything else. Right? Questions are Raymond? Raymond? Audrey, if you happen to be around.
Someone just said, missed a bit. How do you open the settings file?
So I'm going to open it in PyCharm, right? But for now, I'm just using the usual idle. So I'm going to open it in PyCharm. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to open it in PyCharm soon. Was that the only question?
Yeah, that looks like the only question so far.
So we have these guys. So I'm going to go back to my folder. Remember, this folder happens to be empty. And by just running this line of code, we've been able to populate the folder with these additional stuff. So coming back to Tove's question, go back to PyCharm if you happen to have PyCharm. Go to your desktop on PyCharm, just like what I did because I had it on my desktop. I have it as workshop folder, I believe. So I'm just going to check for my workshop. I'm going to open it up here because it's here, right? Can you see it here? This is my workshop folder. You can see that it's showing up in PyCharm. Now I can open the settings here in PyCharm. You can clearly see all the settings here. So you can, as you pointed out, you can open it here and take away all the hashtags. Take away all the hashtags. Take away all the hashtags. Then the name of the app, you change it to workshop app, just like what we have earlier. So I'm still concentrating on the settings because it's more or less like the machine that will help us get things up and running. Now we just have only one app. So I'm going to change this guy here to just workshop. Workshop app. Workshop app. Workshop app. Tova, is that okay? Did you guys see it in your PyCharm? When you open PyCharm, you should see the workshop folder here. So I have this settings here up and running. Now, the next setting that I would like you guys to pay attention to is this guy here, the workshop app. So when you go back to the folder, this guy here, when you open it, you see that we have pages and we have models. These two guys are perhaps the most important aspect of what we need to know. The pages and then the models. The pages and then the models. So when I come back to PyCharm and I open my workshop app, you see pages here. So just click on it, it will open up. And you see models, just open it, it will open up. So you have pages here, you have models here, and you have settings here. Now the next thing here is the last one, which is the template, which is more or less like the HTML. You can open that one also in Python, sorry, in PyCharm. By just clicking on it, it's going to show up. And by just clicking on it, it's going to show up. So 3 of 4 files that you have to keep an eye on. The very first file is a setting, which is very simple. You just go in there, change the number of players, and put in the name of your app. This is very simple. You just do it here, nothing more, nothing. HTML, the pages and then the models are perhaps the most important. So let me just give you guys a theory behind it. The theory behind this, guys, happens to be very simple. First thing, within the models, there are a couple of things that the model takes. It takes things like constants. Constants are things that doesn't change. For instance, when we were computing the investment decision, remember we always had 1 plus R. This one here happens to be a constant, so it's not going to change. So whenever you come to your models, one thing that you have to keep an eye on is what are your constants. So for instance, in my app, I might have a constant which I might want to call maybe round 1. So with round 1, it's just going to be a constant. It's forever going to be a constant regardless of what happens. So whenever I open it up or whenever I have something up and running, it doesn't change. It's always seen as a constant. It's always seen as a constant. So that's one thing you have to keep an eye on. Maybe you might also have a different idea as to what your constants might be. For now, let's just take the round as your constant. Sub-session, this is not interesting because we are not going to have any sub-session in between the apps. So we are going to keep this guy unattended to in terms of the sub-session. So I'm going to keep it unattended to. Our app is not a group app. It's an individual making a decision. So this guy here is also going to be pass. We don't have anything to talk about here. Where I find interesting is this guy here, which is the player. With the player, it's more or less like your input. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yep, people can see your screen.
Okay, good. With the player is more or less like the input that we saw, the investment decision making. This is, think of this guy here as the input that we gave, like our investment principal, our amount of years we would like to hold the amount for, the anything that you think happens to be given to you by the participant who is using your app. So for today's setup, in terms of the player, as we pointed out earlier in our app, we are going to go step by step with the app that we developed. So I'm going to click on this guy here and show you the introduction page. So within this introduction page, I asked for the player to give me his name as well as his email address. So as you create your app, you come here and you fetch the person's name and the person's email address. Is that okay? So this is where you capture everything you would like to ask the person, or you like the person to input, this is where you put it. So when you go to the file that I sent out, for you to do that, this is what you do. It's very simple. Come here, write the name of the person. You can give it any other indication. So here, I'm going to give it as name. And because a name happens to be a string, just like what we saw earlier, I need to write it as a string field. Then remember, within my app, on my first point of call, I ask for the individual's email address. So I come back here, within the player, I'm going to write the email address as well. So within this form field, a couple of things that we need to note. First thing, the constant. Constants are things that don't change. An example of a constant may be the name of the developer, name of the app developer. So let me mute. Raymond, I'm going to mute it. I'm going to mute you. If you have a question, please let me know, okay? So I'm going to write the name of the app developer because it's just going to be me, or it's going to be you as you develop your app. And this is going to be a constant. It's not going to change. So the name, remember, is a string. So the name here is going to be Farouk. It's not going to change. It's a constant. These guys, we don't need them because it's an individual app. Now, what we need here is the name that we are going to collect and the email address that we are going to collect. Now, we need to specify in Python whether this guy is a string or a numeric or whatever that we think is useful. Now, you can see that within this guy, I've written blank equals true. Blank equals true means that when the person decides not to give me his email address, I don't care. I can move to the next page. If I keep it mute, then it means the person should give me his email address. So this is one or two things that you have to keep an eye on. Now, when you are done with this page, you then go to the next page, which we call the models. Within the models, pages. So I'm done with the models. I now move to the pages. Pages basically keeps in mind how your app needs to come up. Which page is supposed to come up? Is it the page that has the individual making their decision in terms of their email address? Or is it the page that comes up in terms of the individuals making decision making? Or is it the page that comes up in terms of the individual saying that I need a fix or I need a random? So this is where you have to keep a track of how the pages need to come. So for my case, I have the very first page being the introduction. So I'm going to write introduction here because that's my first page. And for today, we are just going to keep it at only one page, which is just the introduction. Because I have introduction here, I need to come back here and relabel this guy. Whenever I put something here, I need to come up here and give it a name. So the first page happens to be introduction. I copy introduction, I put it here. So this guy is introduction. That's my first page. And the sequence is that introduction counts first, then counts another page, which we'll look at tomorrow, on Wednesday. Results, wait, we don't need them. We don't need these guys for today. Now, for the introduction page, what we saw here was that it has two fields, right? It has the email address and it has the name of the person. And remember, it comes from the person giving us their email address as well as their form field. So what you need to do here is you quickly go back to your pages, you take away this guy because we need to show the field that we need to input in terms of the email address and in terms of the name. So what you need to do here is, I'm going to send this guy to you as well so you can have a look at it. You copy this guy and you paste it. Remember, this guy is just the form field, right? It takes the player, and this player will give us his name and his email address, and that will be the end of it. So what I would like to point out here is we start with the models, and the models is connected to the pages, because within the models, there's a need for the player to give us something. Then we will transfer that particular information to the pages. And that's what happens to be the most important transfer of information from models to pages. Now that we are done with the models and then the pages, then there's a need for us to transfer any other information that we gathered to the template, because with the template, we can see it in a very nice interface. And this is where HTML comes in. So Python is helping transfer data between itself in terms of pages to models. Then they will finally transfer it to HTML, which we'll see on our website. So how does that work? For it to work, I'm going to show you guys something very simple. Again, I'm going to post this template for you to see in terms of how it works. So I'm going to copy this guy and I'm going to paste it here. So this is the models that we should come across. This is a template. First thing first, because we've labeled the first page as introduction, then there's a need for us to change this guy to introduction as well. We have to change it from my page to introduction. So you can quickly come back to your folder and either add or change. So you can add a new template in an HTML by clicking this guy. Click on this guy nicely. Our first page is introduction, and you click on it. It will be automatically stored. Copy everything, take it out. Now transfer this data back to the introduction HTML. So we have our HTML up and running. What do we see here? The very first thing I would like you guys to pay attention to is this guy here, the form field. You can see that this form field happens to be a player. And it's the same thing that we saw here. And it's the same thing that we saw here as well. So that's a transfer of information from your Python in terms of your pages and models straight out to your HTML, which will be displayed to individuals to see. Again, we ask for the individual's email address. How does that work? We started by indicating that we needed an email address within the player. We then transferred the idea to the form field here, and we finally got it back to this side. So that's the final transfer of information from the models from the pages to the models, then finally to the HTML for us to see what's going on. So I have the HTML ready, I have the models ready, and I have the pages ready. Now the next question here is it possible for me to transfer things like constants? Can I transfer something like a constant here straight to the HTML folder? We will look at that tomorrow, and the answer is yes. You can transfer a constant straight out from the models to this guy here. You can also transfer information straight out from pages to the introduction. So this is where I would like to keep our attention. If you like to further improve on this page, you can work along those lines by maybe just for the sake of maybe exercise, you might want to increase this guy by asking for the contact of the person. So for you to ask for the contact, you come here, you write contact, write the model, you come back here, you improve upon the contact by writing contact here, you finally transfer it here by adding another form field, which is contact. If everyone is okay with this, I would like to show you guys how it will look on an internet. This is a lot. Hopefully the video might help. Raymond, is there anyone with any question in there?
No, there's no questions.
Hey, I hope, because I have a sense that this is too much, but if it's not too much, then So these guys we've been able to transfer data from here and there. Why not just go back to the PowerShell? If you come back to the PowerShell, what you need to do here is very simple. All this while, the folder has been created. You went into the folder to do a couple of corrections here and there by putting in email address and name of the person and what's not, and changing the name of the app. So let's see what comes out of it. So I'm going to quickly run the PowerShell. Just give me a minute. Let me be sure whether I have it. Okay, I have it right. Yeah, I have it right. Just give me a second. So let's see. So I have 3 players here. Okay. Now, for you to have it running, what do? You type div. You start by typing oTree dev server. This is oTree develop server. And hopefully it will develop your server for you if everything goes on board. So we have an issue somewhere, says that player dot is not defined in pages. So let's quickly go to pages. So this is how to debug your information. It says that we have a form field, models is not defined. So there's a need for us to go to the models and redefine what we have there. So let me go to the models in terms of the pages. Okay, models.player. So this should be fine. Don't know why this shouldn't be running. Okay, let me see. So let me quickly go to the models. So I have player here, models.player should run. Why is it not running? Okay. Okay, so let me see once again. I'm gonna run it. If it's not running, I probably have to send you a new video to debug it, given that we don't have enough time. So we have line 6 and line 7. In introduction, form field players dot models is not defined. No, I don't think we have. So I'm gonna get it rectified and attach a new video to that effect. But this is basically how it should work in terms of having the model. So you can see a red line here, which indicates that we have an issue with our models. I need to see what's wrong there. This guy is up and running. This guy is okay. This guy is problematic, unresolved. Let's see. Raymond, I'm gonna send you guys the updated version of this guy, and let's see how together with the files. I think there is an issue with the models that I need to check out. Is that okay? Okay. So if you have questions, let me know, and I'll just correct these models and send it to you. Is there anyone with any question in there? Questions? I'm gonna do something really quick. If you want to stay, you can have a look at it. I'm gonna get it rectified. oTree, start project. If you have questions, please shoot them and let me know, please. If you have questions, let me know before we, yeah.
One by Constantine. Yeah, I've been having issues. Yeah, he's just saying it's got issues too.
Yeah. Constantine was the issue. Yeah. So let me create a new app and see whether I can correct it right away with the sample app. Constantine, you want to read it out as I work on this project?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what the issue is. I think the main issue is that I have multiple Pythons installed. So every time I try to run pip, I get that I'm using the wrong Python version.
Yeah, I get where you are coming from. I had to uninstall my Python and get the 3.8 or 3.7.
Should I just uninstall all the other old versions? Is that what you're saying?
I just went the nuclear version and I took everything.
If you know how to make a virtual environment, which I don't know how, you can have multiple versions of Python running at once. So maybe that's something you can look into as well.
You think I can like share my screen with you guys for a sec?
Feel free. Everyone have a look at it.
I think you might have to unshare your screen.
Oh yeah, I think so. Let me quickly do that. Oh, where's my Zoom? Where's my Zoom? Okay.
Do you have like a taskbar at the very top of your screen?
I think I do. Let me quickly see where I left it. Sorry, I have the Zoom here. Where is it? Everyone, can you see it?
I can't see it, but if you put your cursor up here, is there anything?
Oh, really?
Like if you
No,
just like leave it up there for a little bit, no?
No, there's nothing there.
How about to the bottom?
Just send me a picture of it. I'll have a look at it. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Let me see whether I can get this guy corrected and get it on the same video. Hopefully that might help. So let me see. So I have this guy ready. Okay, oTree start project. So if anyone has any further questions, please let me know. I can help. Yeah. Okay, good. So let me see where the problem might be coming from. So I have WSS. Okay, I have these guys here. Okay, let me go to, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so let me see what I have here. Public good. Where's the public good? Public good. Public good, public good. Okay. Pages. Okay. I see where the problem is coming from. I see where the problem is coming from. Yep. Public good. Pages. Yeah, that's where the issue is coming from. So it's probably inactive given the fact that we are importing from constant, and that's where, yeah. So let me see what we have here. So yeah, we have this guy here. I'm gonna take this guy off. Okay, this is gonna be player. Yep. Yeah, I have this guy here. Let me see public goods. So we have, yeah, contribution, yeah. So let me see whether it's gonna go ahead and solve it for me. I'm gonna take away this guy and see whether I can solve it. Okay, so desktop, workshop. Okay, gets it done. Let's see what comes out of it. Yeah, so everything is working now, right? Are you guys there? So everything is working now. I corrected it. So you can now click on this guy, This is the code you need to run. Yeah, so the issue was that, so let me quickly point out something. So when you go with the oTree, what they have here is they constantly change the line of code. So when you go to the oTree documentation, they constantly change the line of coding. So you have to be a bit more abreast to what's going on. So this is the oTree interface, and they mostly change their code in terms of what Python to use, in terms of what code to use and all that. And I believe their current Python code happens to be 3.8 or 3.7, right? So this is what they have. and I wasn't very careful enough to pick up that difference. So what this did was, in terms of having their new models file, instead of having player, models.player, they just had player. So instead of having model form model to be models.player, they just had player. So I also have to, get myself updated with that and just write player here. So what you have here is just the player, the form field, and everything should be up and working. So when you go to oTree, copy this guy. Now you open Google or any other browser that you have, and you paste that line of code, right? So I just pasted it. You click on it. You now see the name of your app showing here. So this is your workshop app. Then when you click on it, it tells you the number of players that are allowed to use the app. Remember, we had 3 in the settings. So this guy will also have to be 3. So when I click on this guy, I have the first interface, which is the introduction. So you guys can also try it, change the name to your name. If you have a website, change the website's link. If you have any additional information you would like to receive, add them, and it should be fine and up and running. So I'm going to send the files to you. Follow the steps, follow everything that we did step by step, and you should be able to create this page on a web interface. Questions?
I wish I could answer this question, but I also missed the very beginning. Someone's asking, what was the bonus question that you mentioned at the very beginning?
Oh, no, there's no bonus question for this class. This is just a workshop, right? There's no bonus question.
I wasn't sure what they meant either.
Oh, questions?
Maybe you can explain further. 3941.
Which one? Which one? Sorry.
No. Just if you can see the chat box, there's one person asking about if there was a bonus question.
No, there's no bonus question for this class, right? This is just the Python workshop. Yeah. Further questions? Rahman, did I answer your question? Did you realize where the issue was coming from? Is Rahman in there? Yeah. Sure. So that's where the issue was coming from, and hopefully we've been able to resolve it. Yeah. So if there are extra questions, just let me know. And again, I'm going to post this video, and you can follow it stepwise.
So there's a professor from Anson Liu says, do you mind checking your email after this? I've sent you an email regarding the bonus question.
Yep, sure. No extra questions for today? Right?
Hi, if somebody is trying to speak through their mic.
Okay, feel free. If you have a question, you want to speak by mic.
I thought I did hear somebody say hello.
Then I guess that will be it. If there are no questions, then I'll just go ahead and post it and meet you guys. Yeah. Again, is there any question in there? Raymond? Is this the same bonus question?
Yeah, it's another bonus question. So what is the use of the bonus question on the quiz session, as you mentioned on the announcement?
So that's just typically for those in 305, and they know the question to ask. They know the question to solve, so that's not part of today's discussion. So anything about 305 should be 305. If you have any specific to Python for today, just let me know. So those in class for 305 for sure saw the question posted. I just want you guys to upload the solution on the Canvas. And that's not meant for this Python workshop. Okay. Yeah. Raymond, Konstantin was asking a question. Konstantin, you can
No.
use them for free. Yeah. Sure, Azraf. Thanks, Azraf. Konstantin, feel free. Think I can have maybe one more.
Question. I just know.